Hi, welcome to On the Real Side. I'm Bob Mover, and tonight our guest, I'm very happy to have with us a wonderful saxophone player and musician in general, one of my favorites, Mr. Ralph LaLama. Hey, Ralph.
Hi, Bob. How you doing?
I'm very feeling pretty well and happy to have you. Like a lot of these shows, I know these people, and we know each other mostly
Mhm.
on the bandstand,
Right.
kind of between sets where we mostly kid around, but we very rarely say, well, you know, did your father drink a lot? No, I mean, no, I mean,
Actually, he didn't.
he did,
No, he didn't. He did.
he
He didn't.
didn't,
One time, actually, when I used to play with him.
right.
He played drums. My father. So I played with him. Many times. And I remember one time, him and my uncle Ralph, who played bass.
Uh-huh.
Father, my brother playing piano, my uncle Ralph playing bass, and myself playing, saxophone. And like I remember one time somebody gave him a bottle of whiskey, and they finished. They both we were too. We didn't drink, my brother and myself, but he did with my uncle, and they got plastered. And that's the only time I ever saw him drunk, ever, ever.
That's funny. Yeah,
It's
my
funny
place.
you bring that up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't usually ask that question to people. I was just kidding around about it, but now that you've talked about the story, mentioned that story, I got a little story of my dad who really didn't drink very much at all.
Right.
I only really saw him kind of drunk maybe twice in the whole
Yeah.
lived till 89, died a few years back.
Mm.
But the one time I remember mostly of his drinking is I think I may have told this story before here, but when I got my first Charlie Parker record, I ordered this Genius of Charlie Parker. I think it was number 4 or 5, which had the song is You, and it had
Uh,
Laird Beard, had a couple of tracks from the string things, Easy to Love, and it didn't have Just Friends. I got that on my second Charlie Parker record I bought. But anyway, I spent the whole day. I got it, and I started listening to it at about 2 in the afternoon, and listened to it till about 8 or 9 at night. And somehow, though I did not really started to play the saxophone yet or anything, I was 11 years old. I just wanted to sing with it. I've sung along with Lester Young records too, but this Bird record I could sing almost the whole thing
uh,
in a day. So I was pretty surprised myself that I would do it. But I thought my dad will really be impressed by this. Now he was playing at the Diplomat Hotel in Miami Beach. We just moved to Miami.
what did he play?
He played trumpet. My dad was a trumpet player. Yeah.
Okay.
He also played the theremin, which is another story. But he was a trumpet player, and he was playing lead with guys
Wow.
like Vinny Tano. It was a good trumpet section.
Yeah.
And they would play at the Diplomat Hotel, and they would play behind Tony Bennett
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
K Star and Andy
K
Williams.
Star. I remember K Star. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a good singer.
Yeah.
And
I know. Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so my dad was like, he was like he was a good man, and he was happy and this and that. But I say, oh, I can't wait, so I'm going to stay up late because I should be sleeping. I'm in 6th grade, and he comes in, and he seems a little uneasy, and even what I mean, he seemed a little. I just was sensing him, and I was sneaking. I didn't even let him know I was awake yet because I should have been asleep. It was about 11 o'clock, midnight. The show didn't end that late, and he never hung out and drank afterwards or anything, so he was home right away.
Mm.
So I'm hiding kind of in the kitchen, like he can't see me, and he comes in the door and he takes his trumpet in a soft case, and he kind of first he picks up the bills, or he picks up a bunch of envelopes. He starts looking through them, and he throws his horn onto the couch, the soft case. He didn't throw it hard, and then he opens it up, and then he just starts ranting, saying the fucking plumbers, goddamn plumbers, look at this shit, blah blah blah, this and that, and I want to play him, but it's how I can sing Bird, and and he sees me sneaking out from behind there. I say, "Hi, Dad." He says, "You know what? These fucking all these years, you see that damn sax, that damn trumpet on the couch there. I put all these hours, all these years into it, trying to master it, trying to give my life to music, and what the hell? I made a fraction of what this damn plumber is charging us tonight. You go into music, I'll break your fucking head."
Right. 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 Right.
So
Then you sang it. No.
I didn't sing it that
Yeah,
night.
right. You didn't sing it that night.
Yeah. Well, I said, Dad, but just let me sing the spiritual. Yeah, yeah, no.
Yeah.
So it was, he wasn't fond of that. Later, years later, he did kind of change his mind
Yeah.
as, you know, as he realized I was not going to quit, in spite of everything. And, and he was in and out of it. But you had a very musical family. I was reading about that.
Yeah.
And in fact, your grandfather was the first time I hear of a saxophone clarinetist in the family, right?
Exactly. Alto and clarinet. Yes.
And he also had quite a prestigious job in the sense of he was worked for the state of New York in a
No. It was
state
Pennsylvania. I'm from Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
because
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't mean New York. State auditor, right?
State auditor. Yes. Yes. Right.
And
I remember taking some lessons with him, on the clarinet. Not to say that I'm still real young. And there was this ledger book. It was green, and you could really see the black pencil, and I'm seeing like this corporation, $10,000. This corporation, 500. He didn't audit us. He audited corporations.
oh man, yeah.
Yeah, so he was a state auditor. See, so like I said, whoa, I didn't even know what those numbers meant at that time. $500,000. But anyway, that's what he did.
But then they had you. You started clarinet at 9 years old, right?
Yes, he gave me my first clarinet. Yes.
Now,
Yes.
did you play any piano before that, or did you go right to the clarinet, or what?
No, I didn't play. I played little piano after that. I took a couple, lessons, but I wasn't, I was more interested in playing those lines, But
Yeah.
I learned a little piano. I play more piano now than I did then,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was just curious, but that was,
Yeah.
that was. And then at 14, your father got you a tenor.
You got a tenor for Christmas, yeah, a Lamont tenor.
Lamont. Wow.
Lamont, yeah, I never heard of it.
I still haven't heard of it.
Yeah, me, that's right. Yeah, but
Now,
Lamont tenor.
so now in your house, with your dad playing drums, and your uncle playing piano, and so they were really, like Barry Harris would tell somebody. So you were born into this music.
Yeah, kind of like that. I mean, my Uncle Ralph, the bass player, one time we're at my grandmother's house, and every Sunday we'd eat, like we're Italian, ate, great, meatballs, linguine. Okay, so anyway, so we're at one of those days. And he said, Ralph, I just came back from New York. There was a train where we live. We could get on a train and, whatever. You go to Pittsburgh or, anywhere. He said, I just heard Bud Powell. In New York. He didn't tell me what club or anything. He said New York. And I didn't know who Bud Powell was, but I knew that, he was about jazz, because I was about, 10,
Right.
I said, what? And then later on, I realized, Bud Powell, okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing, though,
So your family, they would know who Bud Powell was. In other words, that was the thing. And
yeah.
And so they had those records around the house, like you would hear. I mean, at least would you hear like a lot of the swing records, like the Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman.
Yeah, my grandfather loved Artie Shaw. He loved Artie Shaw. He would always tell me, I like Artie Shaw better than Benny Goodman. That's what he was telling. That's what he would tell me. And then around our house too. Like I remember the first time I really started listening to, like really concert. It was like Stitt. I remember the first record. It was Stitt with Jack McDuff, and then just Stitt with Gene Ammons. And my mother was a vocalist too. So we had, Carmen McRae, we had Ella, a couple of white ladies too that were good, So yeah.
We had that too. We had them, and we had Billy. My mother loved Billy.
Oh yeah.
She also loved, Carmen McRae and June. Not Carmen McRae. Peggy Lee.
Oh yeah, Peggy Lee. That was one of them. Yeah.
Chris Connor and June Christie.
Yeah, June Christie, right.
Two other ones that were, and my dad loved Joe Stafford.
Oh yeah, Joe Stafford. I remember her. Yeah.
He loved her pitch.
Yeah.
She's so in tune. He loved that about her.
Yeah.
And so we both were kind of born into that.
Yeah. Definitely listen to that. Yeah.
It was all around.
And then just to be fair to, I was at that age. I was listening to like James Brown too. That was actually the first guy I ever copied was Maceo. You know what I mean?
So you're younger than me, I guess.
Oh yeah.
How old are you?
73.
Oh wait, we're the same age.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, where'd you grow up? Where? In New York?
I grew up in the basic places. I Boston
Oh, yeah.
area, in a suburb of Boston called Swampscott,
Uh-huh.
till I was 11. Then we lost our money. We went to Miami,
Uh-huh. Oh, well,
and
okay.
then from there, I'm a walking travelogue. So, but
Yeah.
you know, no, because I was thinking my first music was things like Little Richard.
Yeah.
James Brown hadn't really hit the scene.
Well, I was into I was I don't remember I remember Little Richard. But I didn't really care for I don't know. I thought it was kind of stupid actually.
There was Little
Even
Richard, and there was, the Everly Brothers and that kind of
yeah
stuff. You know
yeah
what I mean?
I remember those guys. But James Brown really hit me because it was the beat. I love that beat. You know.
Yeah, well, I remember James Brown, because I went to high school for a half a year in
Uh,
a place called Fairfield, Ohio,
huh.
because my father had a girlfriend there, and we had neither of my parents could really take custody of us, and that's why I'm not going to talk about that because I didn't want to talk about draw such attention to my insane childhood domestic situation. But
Mhm.
nevertheless, where I ended up for 6 months with a girlfriend of my dad's, uh, um, it was at Fairfield High, which is a suburb of Cincinnati.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
of course, James Brown was from Cincinnati.
Yeah. Right.
That was the
Wow. Yeah.
scene. So that's where I first heard of James Brown and a bunch of guys from high school. I was already into, I was playing. I was 15, and I had just finished studying with Phil Woods the summer before at this jazz camp that he had. And so, but then we moved to Cincinnati, well, to Fairfield near Cincinnati, and these guys in school, a couple of the guys that played trumpet and saxophone said, "We're taking you to a concert tonight, and you're gonna love this stuff." And I did. They brought
Uh-huh.
me to hear James Brown live,
Uh-huh.
and I had
Wow.
never really heard of him before.
See, that's great.
And that was 1967
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah.
the year. And you would have been 16, I would have been 15.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and that's when I was playing James Brown too. Mayfield, we had a band in high school. We worked working 6 nights a week, man.
really,
Yeah, we're working 6 nights. But see, that's what I mean. You were more into jazz at that time than I was. I mean, I was listening to it, but I wasn't playing it. I was just like would hear the blues and rhythm changes I kind of had in my ear. But
yeah. Well, but at the same point, I was working. I know you were in Aliquippa. Is that how you,
Aliquippa. Yeah.
Aliquippa, Pennsylvania? Is
Okay.
that near Pittsburgh? Is that the closest?
Very close to Pittsburgh. Yes,
Very
15
close to
miles, 16, maybe 20 miles. Yeah.
Pittsburgh, 20 miles. So, like
Yeah.
Swampscott was near Boston, same distance.
Yeah.
North Shore, near Lynn.
Yeah.
And my first gigs though were much like yours, because there was a band in Miami. I moved to Miami when I was 12, 11, and then I was listening to that stuff. But then when I played saxophone, I started at 13, and I played with a band called the Stone Fence, which played at the Dream Lounge in the Janina Hotel on Miami Beach.
Yeah.
And their repertoire was like, Wilson Pickett, Wait to the
Yeah,
Midnight,
we played all that shit too. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Try a Little Tenderness of
yeah, yeah. All them tunes, yeah,
uh,
those tunes, yeah.
Otis Redding and all that Proud Mary,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Probably remember that one. Yeah,
so we were playing that kind of music. I wasn't good enough to make a living playing jazz yet.
yeah, yeah. I understand. Yeah, but yeah,
So that's what we were both sort of. I love the idea of these parallel lives. We're kind of having a parallel existence, and then
yeah,
gravitating toward jazz in our ways,
yeah.
and then ending up.
You talked about earlier, like that we knew each other, and we have for a long time. But I knew you before you knew me because I remember I used to go here, like where was it? 86th Street, the club.
Strikers.
Right, Strikers. Well, you and Harold and Chet, and I remember Dave Shapiro playing
That's
bass.
the band.
Yeah, I used to hear you guys all the time because I knew Harold because Harold was near Youngstown, and that's
He
where
was
I
in
went to
Youngstown.
school. Yeah, when Harold graduated, I was a freshman, but I knew him. And then when I came to New York, he was one of the people I knew. So I would he would tell, "Oh, I'm playing the Striker, come 86th Street," and that's when I heard you, man, for the first
That's
time.
wow. I believe we met there. I can still
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
meeting you and your brother Dave.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, but he came a little later.
Guys,
That's what I mean. In the background, I was hearing you because David didn't come to probably about 3 years later than when I was
oh,
here. So in my first year, I was coming out to hear you guys all the time, But I didn't talk. I stayed in the background because I wanted to listen. I didn't want to talk.
Well, it was funny. You and Harold Danko, we should tell people who are watching this that Aliquippa
Yeah,
and Youngstown
yeah.
is not Scarsdale.
That's right. That's
you
right.
know, you're talking about a tough part of the world. These
Oh,
are
you got
these
that
are
right.
God's people, man. These are people that really work for a living. We're talking steel mines.
That's right. I live
And
right by the steel,
that's what I mean. So you grew up in a
railroad tracks, right? I grew up, my pad and then the railroad tracks, and the steel
and,
mill to the left.
and there is a certain urbanity that I've always liked about your playing that I find doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like you're from Scarsdale. There's a certain toughness and yet a sensitivity and gentleness to your playing that I find in maybe because I have a quality of that too, but
Yeah, yeah.
I think we share that. But I really hear that in your playing is that you're tough but gentle,
Mm,
and
yeah.
that's a very interesting emotional quality in your music, and I find that to be
I
something.
appreciate that you hear that. I really do. And that's why, that's why I used to go hear you too. I remember that. I said, wow, this cat was bad, man. you know,
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a lot of the same values, plus the idea of having real respect. That was the other thing in your playing that I find that you and I both share is this true respect for these traditions.
oh yeah.
And, I like the way this particular article and all about jazz that they did on you, which I preferred to for some of my information about you, background information that I didn't know before,
Mhm.
like knowing what Aliquippa, Pennsylvania was and that kind of thing.
Right, right.
But they called the article Ralph LaLama, a disciple, not a clone.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really, you mentioned that even about yourself, that we're disciples. We're disciples of Bird and Sonny Rollins
Right, right.
and Hank Mobley and Train and Joe Henderson and all these people.
That's right.
But we must, the beauty, I know what attracted you to it was the fact that we can express an original
Yeah.
uh, personality
And personality, sure.
in this music, and, I wonder, and this is a question I ask you because it's been brought up to me. Somebody said, man, you're the last of the Mohicans. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I said, Don Schlitten said this to me years ago. He said, you're one of the last great players. I said, well, no, I heard a kid the other night who played the saxophone better than I do. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of kids who can play. I know, man.
there's some cats out there that he said, no, but you're the last one. And I think that I don't think we're the very last ones, but because of where we are historically,
Yeah.
he said, you're the last ones to play with humor and romance.
Yeah, I can dig that. Yeah.
And, and I heard that quality in your playing, and it's kind of a quality that I don't want to say it's leaving the music, but it's harder to find.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Everybody's worried about how high and how fast they can play rather than telling the story, You know.
Yeah, that's that's the thing with that.
Well, could I say something about Aliquippa? You're going to dig this. Aliquippa, it's Queen Aliquippa. She was an Indian queen.
Well,
Yeah, man. Now check this out. So me, like I know Joe Labano, right? So
sure.
we're pretty close, right? So we know each other. I'm from Aliquippa near Pittsburgh, and he's from Cleveland, right? So we're always, we know each other's history. We've been friends a long time, And so anyway, one day he's eating. Him and Judy are eating breakfast with Sheila Jordan. Okay.
I know Sheila well. Sheila's a
Okay, okay, okay. Now check this out. I'm glad you know her well because you'll love this. So they're eating there and they're talking. Labano. He's always talking about his heritage. Italian. Where and growing up in Cleveland and Italy. He's been there 1,000 times, seen his family there. Okay, and then Sheila goes, well, in my heritage, I'm part Indian. I grew up. I mean, I'm part Indian. my
American Indian, yeah.
yeah. So, and my great, 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 great grandmother was Queen Aliquippa.
No.
And then Lovano, he calls me up like after break. I don't even think he finished his food. He called, he said, Ralph, you're not going to believe this, but Sheila, I'm talking to Sheila. And she said, oh, Queen Aliquippa. And I played with Sheila before and I know her and stuff. But so like, but we never talked about that, you know. So
Right. These are things you don't
I
really
remember
talk about.
playing with her in Philly at the Kimmel Center and playing the Chicago Festival with her a couple times. And like, so we never, you know, we flew it together and stuff. We never talked about that, you know. And like, so I flipped out. So every summer we do this like jazz camp together. Ronnie Ben-Hur jazz camp, and
I've done Ronnie's camp when I was still mobile.
yeah, okay, yeah. And this is the University of Vermont. So Sheila's on there. So when the first time she was there, I knew she was going to be there. So I bought this T-shirt. I told my boys back in Aliquippa, make this T-shirt with Aliquippa and her like her picture on. You know, it's a thing on a T-shirt. It's not very specific, but it's, you know, Queen Aliquippa. I gave it to her, man. You know, and I said, man, you know, and then every time we see each other, which is every summer, you know, that's what it's about. Queen Aliquippa. Now, I mean, you imagine that's crazy, right? I mean, that's
That is,
unbelievable.
that is crazy that her great grandmother was Queen Aliquippa.
Yeah, yeah. Great
There's
four.
always
Four
been something
greats.
regal about Sheila.
What's that?
There's always been something regal about
I
Sheila.
know, I know she's amazing. She's still doing it too, man. You know, 96 and she's still doing it. You know, I see her.
Wonderful.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, there was, and I was thinking about that, about, yeah, now you've had a long relationship. We might as well. You know, actually, I was at Ronnie's camp in the years before it went to the university there
Uh-huh.
when he was just doing it at a farm
Yeah.
upstate, in upstate New York.
Yeah, I did one of those, I think. But you
Yeah.
weren't there, 'cause I probably took your place, I guess. I don't. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, you know, but, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's an interesting experience because, you know, I think that the students that you get and more the students that I get just teaching privately and that kind of thing are people that are, you know, ex-CEOs and doctors and
I
lawyers.
know. Oh, yeah, I know, man. It's amazing. I know. This guy,
And,
yeah, lawyers, doctors, sure. Yeah.
I
Teachers.
had one student who decided to play tenor. He had played some clarinet in high school and he listened to jazz all his life.
Mhm.
And then he decided he played a little tenor also in high school, but he was now 60 something and he was retiring. And he called me and said, I want to study with you. And he said, you know, I decided to take up the saxophone again. And then we started to become friends and everything. And I asked him, well, what made you do this? You know, what did you do this for? He says, well, I was playing golf. And then I thought, well, I started to play my horn a little bit. And I had a party one night and somebody said, you would still play your horn? I played a couple of tunes and I played.
Mhm.
People were happy. And I thought, gee, music makes people happy. Nobody's happy about my golf game.
Good. That's good. Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah. I know
And
there's all kind of characters at that place, man. Phew.
yeah, so
They have
that's
a lot of money too, these guys.
yeah, that's yeah, it's funny because they have the money and we have something else
They want.
they would like, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to talk to you about this. You know, the serendipity. One thing that fascinates me about the lives of all of our musical brothers and sisters
Mhm.
when you get into it is the serendipity factor. You know, there's that a lot of us have this strange karma. I mean, and I'm sure all people have strange karma, as Rodney Dangerfield's friend Joe Ansis said. I thought it was a great line. He said, the only normal people are the people you don't know well.
Right. That makes sense.
You know.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, the thing is that we've all had these rather fortuitous things that kind of happen just through pure chance.
Right.
You know, now one thing I got in reading your biography here and that article in All About Jazz, which was fascinating and interesting, and I related it to certain parallels in my life, the way I met people like Lee Konitz, Sonny Rollins, and Ira Sullivan, people that became important people in my life as mentors and as people that helped my career, whatever you call it, career or
Right,
vacation.
right,
Vocation, it's been a vacation too, but it's been,
right, right. I
my
hear
vocation has been a vacation. No, no, no.
you.
But meaning to say that there's a story of you and Thad Jones that I wanted to that I read that I thought was very interesting. You were hired. You were not hired, but you were at the University of Youngstown, right?
Yeah, Youngstown, yeah, yeah.
Youngstown State. Is that what it was called?
Youngstown State University, yeah, Danish School of Music, yeah,
And you were a music major and playing a lot of clarinet
yeah,
and saxophone,
yeah,
doing all that. And Thad Jones came to do a clinic at the school.
right.
And basically, this is how you got to New York. I mean, you may have gone there anyway, with your
But
gift.
I asked him, I didn't want to really be a band director, high school band director, that was kind of my degree,
Right, that was your basic.
and he said, well, man, if you really want to play, you come to New York. And I took his advice,
Well, and then strangely, I mean, when you did get there, oh, Ralph, could you just pull back a little so I can see your whole face?
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
your beautiful
I'm slipping in this chair.
foot
Okay.
there. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and then not ironically, but he kind of, I know you're very modest, but he did hear you play
yeah,
while he was there doing the clinic.
yeah.
And when you got to New York, he was really the only cat you knew in New York. In a way, was that I don't think you had a large circle of.
I didn't know. I knew Herman Harold.
You knew Danko, yeah, Harold Danko, and him.
Yeah,
So you gave him a call, right?
yeah. He hired me like the do quintet gig.
Right. I mean, that's why. I mean, he still had the big band, but in the big band there were other guys that were
Yeah.
doing that for a
I
while.
used to sub in the band, but the first gig I played with him, I was here for 2 weeks, and him and Mel were teaching at that William Patterson College, and they had
Right.
like 3 nights on, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday gig there, just a quintet. And he said, "You want to play?" I said, "Yeah." So so I just have to find how to get there because I was in New York for 2 weeks. So I had no idea how to get to Jersey, But anyway, so I went and I played, and I was just happy they played a tune I ever heard of, let alone knew. You know what I mean? I mean, heard of. I mean, yeah, I heard that tune before, And then, but it was a great experience. I mean, it was amazing, It was George Mraz and Walter Norris and Mel and Thad, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's what a wonderful thing that
That was amazing,
would have been, and you became close friends with Thad.
Oh yeah, I mean, club, but yeah, but he was very nice to me. He was very supportive, I just remember, I played. And I used to sub, and then I left New York because I played with Woody Herman for a while, and I came back, played again, but it wasn't Mel. It was just the Mel's band, And then I used to sub with Mel's band too. That's when Levano was in it, Oates and Ted Nash and Smolian. And they
And
had
there was a later that's a later version after Thad was gone.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And then, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I used to sub in that band, and then I finally got the gig because Gary Prebeck quit. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah.
he quit, and then you know that was
Yeah, I
it.
remember Prebeck and Grossman were kind of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
team for a while. They were hanging out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Grossman, yeah. Grossman was something else too, man. Ooh, I used to hang out with him too sometimes. Yeah, he was. Yeah, I loved him. He was crazy, but I loved him.
Yeah, I loved him too. Same thing.
Yeah.
One time we were talking about women, and Steve and I were saying, and Grossman says to me, I've never really left a woman. I said, really?
What?
Somehow
What?
that subject came up. He said, I've never, I mean, in a relationship, I've never walked out, I've never been the first to leave the relationship.
I
I
did.
said, and I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
And then he elaborated. I said, uh-huh. He said, no, it hurts a woman very much when you leave them. Their egos they're delicate, they get shattered. What I prefer to do is I make them leave through subterfuge.
yeah, you're right. That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Rose, wow.
He was,
Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
but, he Yeah, I miss him. I mean, he was a very unique person. That way.
Sure was.
And speaking of unique people, when you mentioned that first gig with Thad, this one I could write. I mean, one could have reams of novels uh, written about him. I found George Mraz to be one of the more unique characters. Music filled with unique characters. George, I think, was a real exceptional cat. I don't think I ever met a more brilliant musician. One band we were in, on the breaks, George would sit at the piano and just play Bach. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
he was,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was good. He was good, man. Yeah, there's something great. Yeah, jeez, ridiculous. Yeah, that's the thing about New York, man. It's like, for me, it was a culture shock. Everybody was like so good. And that's what I dug. I like, that's how you learn,
yeah. I mean,
in an environment,
yeah. I mean, George was, for all his, he could be very funny.
Yeah.
I mean, he one time we had sort of a thing with with a girl, and the girl had kind of gone back and forth and this kind of thing. And it was awkward to see each other, so I took a little time, and we didn't work anything gigs together during that period. Nobody, So then one night he was at Bradley's. I knew he was there with Tommy Flanagan, and I used to like to go down and hear them. And then sometimes they let me play a couple tunes at the end of the night. So I said, "Oh, this has gone on too long. I want to make up with George. This is silly to let this stuff get in the way."
All right.
I went down, and they're playing. They finish the set, and we haven't talked to him for about maybe 7 or 8 months. And we used to talk on the phone together. We were pretty close at one point, and he'd tell me about his childhood, and we were friends. But George, at this point, it was awkward. So George looks at me, and I look at him, and nobody says anything, and he goes finally, Bob. I go, George. He says, so tell me, Bob, what do you think about this weather that we have been having lately?
That broke the ice.
That broke the ice,
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
that always,
There you go.
you know.
It's over. Hell with it. Yeah.
So then, Thad, I never got to know Thad very well. I mean, I was around him. I used to go hear him. My dad and I lived in New York in 1968 with my father for that year. And, that's one of the travelogue. But that was one place that I started to play. I started to sit in with people at that time, Roy Eldridge, Zoot Sims, and all these wonderful cats. I studied with Richie Kamuka for a while, and and would go to the Merv Griffin show where he played, and just he'd give me my lessons in the back room of the Griffin show, and people like Jim Hall and Bob Brookmeyer would stare at me and would watch my lesson, and that was kind of out. But the story I mean to tell is we would hear Thad on Monday nights. My dad, is a big band. He's with Tommy Dorsey and Charlie Spivak, and was with quite a few good big bands. Had his own big band in Boston, and was friends with Serge Shaloff. And they were on Ina Ray Hutton's band when she had men in the band. My dad and Serge together were on that. But anyway, he loved big bands, and we would go on Monday nights, the two of us, and hear Thad and Mel. And Thad was playing a lot of trumpet in that band too. I mean, cornet, but he was playing. Oh man, it was not just his writing, but you realize what a great trumpet player, what a great improviser he was.
Oh sure.
And but I never, really got next to him, got to know him Do you have a good Thad Jones story for me or anything? Like,
Well, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, what I was saying before, I forgot the go to the point is like, in other words, Thad left the band. Now he's the head of Basie's band, right? And we're in Stockholm with the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra, and and then we opened up actually for Basie with Thad leading, and we Mel Lewis then Thad, okay.
I
And
didn't
then
realize that.
yeah, then the next night we had another gig at a club with the Mel Lewis band, and Thad was off, but he came to the gig. He came to the gig to hear us. Like being in the club, and then I just remembered that he heard the first set, and then we all went over to him, and to say hello, and and he would call people booger, hey booger, and like, and I remember when I went to him, we kind of hugged and stuff, and he said something very positive in my head, and that was probably about 10 years later, as far as me coming to New York. This was about 10 years later, and that made it all worth it. You live in New York, I have to adjust, culturally, and everything, the whole bit about New York, living here, and how crazy it is and stuff, which I kind of never bothered me, but still you have to get used to it. And then when he said what he said to me, I said, wow, it's all worth it. You know what I mean? And
Oh, I
that's
know
what I was trying to get at before, and I forgot. But I remember now. And then, but the thing about Thad playing, yeah.
What did he say exactly? What did
Well, I just said that he knew he did the right thing by telling me to come to New York.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was like, wow, because that said, I happen to play a lot of solos, because I don't know why, but usually play one or two, but I played like three or four. I don't, it just happened that way. You know what I mean?
Maybe Mel, there's that little thing too. Mel knew
Maybe,
that
yeah,
Thad brought you into New York.
yeah,
That
maybe, yeah,
you hear your boy here,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, so that's like, I mean, that's not a great answer, but just to go, I used to go hear the band a lot too. When I was in New York, when I wasn't on the road, like I would go hear him, and he was always like fantastic. He was just such a great guy too. He was like, he was just so warm and like big. He was like big and warm, and his mentality, his musical mentality, forget about it. Even now, I've been playing in that band for 40 years, and I still flip out on some of the tunes. I mean, how they go, how he maneuvers the harmony and the rhythm. It's like Beethoven, man. It's a lot of power. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And it's deep. It's like deep. The movement is deep, man.
Yeah,
Dominant. And he's
that family
dominant.
had some genes, didn't they?
Yeah, I sure did.
That I heard he was a hell of a pool player too.
Yeah, I heard I never witnessed that, but I heard that. Yeah. Danny Moore used to tell me that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think Danny told me that too, and Hank and I were friends, and I mentioned to Hank, I said, and Hank was so funny too.
Yeah.
I said, I hear that your brother Thad is a hell of a pool player. What about you? You got any hobbies or anything? He said,
Me?
no.
Oh, you're talking. Okay. Okay.
I asked Hank, do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, yeah.
And he said in the most serious way, I have no hobbies.
Yeah, that's funny. I get one time, Lovato was playing with Hank and Paul Motion and George at Birdland. So, I went to go see my man, I happened to have my horn with me, so they asked me to play, right? So I played, a couple tunes, same thing at the end of the night, played. And then, and I was talking to Thad, I'm talking to Hank, I said, Hank, when I was in college, Thad came to do a clinic. He was there for a couple of days, and he was doing the clinic where he's talking to people, and he goes, somebody asked him, Mr. Jones, how do you come up with all that stuff, all that core, how do you do? He goes, well, when I was a kid, I used to listen to my brother modulate, meaning Thad would hear Hank practice, and he used the word modulate, and I told that to Hank, and he went, really? Dad said that about me, really? And he started acting like a little kid. I said, yeah, Hank, I'm not bullshitting you. Why would I, why would I make this up? You know, cause he said, really, I can't believe he did. Really, he said that about. And I said, wow.
Yeah, that's well. There was a big age difference,
Yeah, yeah,
especially between Elvin, but but even Hank,
yeah,
he wasn't sure if he influenced his brothers at all. He told me that once. He said, "I don't know how much they got from me," he said, because I was out of there pretty fast.
yeah. No, but that's what he said. That's what Dad said. I would listen to I never forget it. I listened to my brother modulate.
That's interesting.
That's right, man. It's great.
Yeah, that was. So I was thinking in terms of mentors and that type of thing. In fact, while we're on that subject, I was going to mention this at the beginning of the podcast, but we're all kind of lamenting, well, saddened by the demise of the great Benny Golson,
Oh, there you go. So, yeah.
who meant a lot to the whole community.
Yeah.
He was talking about the last of the Mohicans.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was very special. I never got to know him.
Yeah. I met him a couple of times. I didn't really know him though. I met him.
Yeah, I always wanted to know him, and he seemed accessible enough. But I just I'm shy sometimes too.
Yeah.
I figure if I'm thrust in a situation with somebody, then I'm not so shy because I get to play and it kind of softens everything. But otherwise, then I just feel like I'm just some other some other jerk bugging a guy.
I understand. I feel the same way most of the time. I'm a saxophone player. Yeah.
Right. Good luck. There's that famous story of Stan Getz, who was not the nicest guy in the world to everyone. He was nice to me, though. I must say that. So.
Yeah, I understand a little bit. Yeah.
But Emilio, was his man in Boston. Emilio, the repairman, Emilio Lyons, big repairman. And Stan would come to Boston and get his horn fixed by Emilio.
Right, sure.
Did his work. So Emilio used to pick him up himself at the airport. This particular day, Emilio worked at Rayburn's Music in Boston.
Boston, yeah.
And he was busy, so he sent this young guy. He said to one of the guys, a young saxophone player, hey, you want to pick Stan Getz up at the airport? Tell him I couldn't make it. I'm kind of, busy. So here's his flight. He's coming in on such and such and such and such time. I said, wow, oh great. So he's there. He's got the sign, Stan Getz, and Getz gets off the plane. They start walking toward the guy's car, and Stan says, "You a saxophone player?" I said, "Why, yes, I am." And Stan goes, "Taxi."
That's nice. Yeah. I remember. All right, go ahead.
No.
No, I was just thinking one time I was, playing in Vanguard, and Stan Getz was sitting back there in a bar, and everybody saying hello. Okay, and then the next day, whoever was playing there, Stan had a record date in the afternoon, Tuesday afternoon. So he went to the Vanguard again, and I did too, just because So I can't remember who was playing, but I was there, and I kind of went to the bar, and I was sitting like in front of him, and then during the break, he tapped me, and he goes, "Didn't you play didn't you play over there?" He pointed where I was sitting, and I said, "Yeah, that was me." And he kind of said I sounded good. So I went immediately to the phone, and I called my father. It's like about 1 a.m, 2 that's when you went 10 to 2. It was about 1 a.m, and I called they used to have a pay phone there at the Vanguard, and I woke him up. I said, "You're not gonna believe this, man. I just met Stan Getz again." And he said he liked the way I played, So I woke him up, and I knew he liked Stan Getz too.
And that would be worth getting awakened for.
That's right. That's what he told me. No, that was great, Rob. But that was exciting.
It is exciting when those cats, hear you.
Yeah.
It was, and we were like really the last generation where those cats were kind of walking around freely. You would run into them at Boomers or Sweet Basil or the Vanguard.
Right, all those places, yeah.
All those places, and it was unusual. And of course, Bradley's.
Yeah, Bradley, sure. Hell yeah. That was a scene, yeah.
You were one of the Bradley.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Bradley guys.
Yeah.
And there was that kind of situation. I used to love when Bradley would close the club.
Oh yeah, we hang up. Yeah.
And then the hang, then remember Bradley Cunningham, if those of you don't know that, was the owner of Bradley's,
Right.
which was sort of like the clubhouse for jazz musicians.
Right.
He stayed open late, and he only had duos because he didn't have the cabaret license, which you needed at the time in order to have drums or horns.
Right.
So, but cats would sit in all the time. I don't remember ever him telling me I got busted because Al Cohn was playing,
Right.
you know, or one of us, you know. And he would close the club officially at about 3:45.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was then, and then the door would lock, and Bradley would basically treat his friends to drinks and whatever nefarious activities that might be going on there. I have a surprise for us. Here is our surprise.
This is our surprise, Little Smoley.
Speaking of Bradley's.
Surprise!
Hey, send me that music we're going to play.
Oh, I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
We're going to Belgium next week. Me and
Yeah,
Gary.
you're playing with my student, John Stewart.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
playing for a
that's
couple
right.
weeks in Belgium. We got a bunch of gigs there playing.
Well,
Three horns, bass, and drums.
Yeah, which was a good idea. He took the advice I gave him. Well, actually, he maybe had the advice on his own. The idea, when I met him 17 years ago in New York, he was visiting, and I found him that white Brillhart on that tenor mouthpiece, which is a great tenor mouthpiece. I was going to get it for myself, but he was such a sweet cat that somehow he put it on and he sounded much better than the other mouthpiece he had. I said, you know what? I was going to take this to Rod Baltimore's, and I was working there part-time, helping Rod with, selling mouthpieces and horns and doing that because I didn't want to go on the road. I didn't want to take a subway or a bus. I was so tired of traveling. But anyway, I was there, and John came in, and I had that white Brillhart, and I was saying, I'm gonna buy this mouthpiece myself from Rod, and then John, he really wanted. He said, I couldn't find anything for him. I said, well, try this, and it was really good. So he bought it, and he said, well, can I take a lesson for you from you while I'm here? I said, yeah, sure. So I gave him a lesson, and then he said, do you want to tour Belgium? Do you want to play a gig with me? And I said, well, that's a smart thing. He wants to study, and yet rather than just take isolated lessons, because we didn't have Zoom at the time or anything, it was about 17 years. Rather than do that,
play with you.
He's going to write, get me gigs, and it pays me a lot better than a lesson.
Yeah.
And his gigs were always, they weren't the most best paying gigs, but they weren't bad. And it was fun, and it was nice to do, and plus he was learning, and he's improved every time we played together. He grew, and so I think that's funny. And then I said, well, I introduced him to you, Gary, when you were and we had lunch together, and I said, hey, you should get Gary to come over. And then that led to Ralph, and so
speaking of white Brillharts, that's what Dick Oates is playing, a white Brillhart now. So he's and so with the first tour I did with John was with Dick, and now Ralph's doing it. So yeah, it'll be funny. John puts together these nice little tours, man. They're like, like at some, the Music Village and Porgy and Bess.
Oh, I know all those clubs, yeah.
Yeah, and then like some small places, like playing like little chapels and churches and playing on farms and all kinds of crazy nice gigs.
Private homes and Belgium's an underrated country, I think. I think it's
not for beer.
Not for beer. I'm not a beer drinker, but definitely for wine. I'll tell you, it ain't a wine country. But it's I think that those tours. Oh, the Dick Oates and the Brillhart. I don't know if that has anything to do with me, but I played this white Brillhart for 35 years. And Oates really liked my white Brillhart. He told me that when he sat in with me years ago in Toronto. We played a little bit. When I was living in Toronto, he came and played with Gary Dial and Jay Anderson and those guys. And I had an afternoon gig, and they came and sat in with me on that gig. And Dick and I played it, and he was like, I saw him eyeing that Brillhart. He wasn't playing it yet. And next thing I knew, he had that white Brillhart, which is fine, because I love the way he plays. He's probably my favorite of my generation, and he sounds really good on it. I heard some things on YouTube.
Yeah.
But he one time had a mouthpiece. The first time I heard him, he was playing with Jerry Tillits.
Oh boy.
The
Yeah.
player, remember Jerry Tillits?
Yeah, I remember. I played with him a bunch too. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a Sweet Basil gig. And I hadn't heard Dick before, and I really liked him. And I came, he was there, and he had a Berg Larson rubber, a black.
That's what he played for years. Yeah.
Right. And so after the gig, we met, and we hit it off right away. And I said, I really like the sound of that mouthpiece you've got. And in those days, nobody had COVID or AIDS or anything. He said, oh, you want to try it? And, saxophone players are sloppy. We just, sure, you can have my mouthpiece. Tomorrow you can use my toothbrush. I mean, we're, terrible. But, so I tried his mouthpiece, and I was like, oh, ooh. And he said, I want it back right now. And we were joking with each other because I found something on that mouthpiece too. I should have. But
speaking of weird gigs, so John hooks up these funny gigs. So last time we were there with Dick, I don't know. I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story. So I guess he found out. At one point I went to cooking school. I learned. I was cooking in a restaurant for a couple of years. So I stopped. It's not that I stopped playing, but I got tired of playing like weddings and club dates and bar mitzvahs. It was just really getting to be tiring. So
yeah,
I enjoyed cooking. So one of the gigs that John got the last tour we did, this is pre-COVID, was working in a restaurant, which I didn't know. And I showed up, and my job was to cook. They put me in the kitchen to cook mussels. And Oates played solo saxophone in the dining room. And I was in the kitchen for 4 hours they named a mussel dish after me. So
really,
I was like,
exactly. This was
in somewhere in probably Brussels. I don't remember where it was, but I showed up and they gave me, they gave me an apron and that's where you're working tonight.
How did they find out that you cooked?
I don't know. I mean, they just found out, or John told them, or something.
He knew about that.
Yeah, I guess so. It was far out. So that was the weirdest gig I ever did. So I showed up and they put me in the kitchen. I mean, usually you have to walk through the kitchen.
I want the recipe.
You what?
I want that recipe, man.
Nothing. It's easy. Mussels, white wine, garlic, and parsley. It's easy.
That's the conventional.
Yeah, move free.
I'm sure you put the Samoan touch on it. By the way, folks, this is the great baritone saxophonist Gary Samoan, who Gary will be our guest next week in the next podcast we're doing on the real side is Gary. And as we were speaking today, I said, oh, I'm talking to Ralph tonight. And Gary said, gee, it'd be nice to talk with him. I said, drop by, So this has become, he didn't know he was going to do it because he's taking care of his elderly father and a son has moved back home. So I know you're very busy with your family, and thank you for showing up.
He hasn't moved back home, but we're good.
Ah, good. Oh,
everything's cool.
Good. Great to see you. I'm so glad
you do it. I'm not going to take up a lot of time because Ralph.
Oh, just take a little more.
I was just glad that very nice that we could, just wanted to kind of talk about this tour that's coming up together. And Ralph's one of my favorite musicians, and we've been playing together for over 40 years, and
I know.
Pretty great. And I've known you. I mean, since I was 16, I've known you for 50 years.
You were my first student.
Yes, and proud of it.
I was working with Chet Baker, and I was 21, I think, or 22. Yeah. You were 16.
I was 16 playing alto.
Playing alto, really nice. Yeah, I remember that. And I would bring you to sit in with Chet after the lesson.
Well, I mean, the thing of the story was that you were playing at the Someday Lounge with Harold Danko was playing piano. I think Chip Jackson was playing bass. And, oh boy, it escapes me. Anyway, but I wanted to sit in. Or maybe it was Sonny's place. Yeah, Jimmy Madison. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to sit in. I was like a little kid, I was 16. And so I had to audition to sit in. You made me audition. So you brought me back to the jukebox. And you played Bird with Strings, playing Just Friends. And you said, if you can sing this entire solo, the entire tune, you can sit in with Chet Baker, and I actually could do it. That was I studied that like crazy, and I think that might have thrown you for a little bit of a loop.
Well, no, I felt you probably could. That was the other thing. I mean, I wouldn't have said it to you. I wouldn't just say that to anybody.
Right.
But the way you talked about music, we talked about Bird, I had the feeling that you could do it.
Right, but it was I tell my students that this is what I had to do to like get a chance to get on the bandstand with him. So it's
New York. I had to give you the necessary pressure.
Oh boy!
I mean, that was that was like part of the tradition. You just don't tell somebody, yeah, sure, welcome, come on up. I thought you had to. That's how people treated me.
Sure.
I figured that that I would do that, but I wouldn't have actually, even if you could have sung the first chorus, I would have let you sit in.
Yeah, no, I know. It was actually pretty great, and and we just I had so much respect. You're one of my favorite musicians. You play so beautifully, man. Just like
Thanks.
So inspiring, and I love your product placement of your book. Right in the beginning, your book, is that your book behind you?
Oh yeah, I had to put something behind me.
It's like, when the politicians go on MSNBC, they have their book behind them. It's like,
that's right. They do that. I even have a record behind me too.
Oh yeah, I want to get that.
Jr. and my duets from Salerno in 1987. It only took me 30-something years to get the record out, but I'd like to thank. Man, Corey Weeds.
Oh yeah, from Cellar Records. Yeah,
for getting that out, and my friend John Bennett, who brought the record to him. But anyway, that's
it's good product placement, man. It's really. I think I'm watching Rachel Maddow over here.
Yeah, there we are. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Joe Cohn was at an event one night, and it happened to be he was in the elevator, and the band was late. It was playing, and Joe was a little late, and he was in the elevator with Donald Trump. This is way before he ran for president, and he heard the music was playing, and he heard Trump say, "Jazz.
I hate jazz.
I hate jazz." Yeah, he said that.
Yeah.
Which I would be very disappointed if he said jazz. I like jazz.
Yeah.
How to handle that one?
Or I knew your old man.
Yeah, right. But,
all right, I just wanted to come on for just a minute and say hi. I don't want to take Ralph's time. We'll see. I'll see you on Monday, but I want to just say hi.
Thank you for falling by, Gary. And we'll see Gary next week.
Yeah, we'll see you Monday.
We'll get into more depth.
I hope.
Now, back to the deep, Mr. Lalama.
Ralph, I'll see you later. Thank you, Bob. And
send me that stuff.
I will. I'll send you the music.
No, you don't have nothing to do. Rachel's
I'll
over.
do it right now.
Rachel's over.
All right, Bob. Stay well. See you next week.
All right.
Yeah, you too, Gary.
I'm gonna be calling Nicole. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll get her in here too.
All right. See you later, Bob. See you, Ralph.
I gotta leave though. Can I leave now? Just to call her?
Oh, you can leave.
I'm gonna keep talking.
Oh, okay. It's hard to say when someone to keep talking. You're just like, what? Okay, I'll keep talking.
Okay, well, so what else is new?
Yeah, exactly.
This weather we've been having lately.
Oh boy.
And
Bob, you look great, by the way. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, you look great too, man. You don't age.
Are you at your apartment now? I see there's some Van Doren Reeds in the back. You have a good good product placement for everything.
See the Van Doren Reeds. Oh yeah, there they are.
Good.
And then we have.
I'll be right there.
What do you got?
Summer Ballads, Super Ballads action with the Ted Klum Yardbird mouthpiece while we're product placing.
I heard you play that, man. It sounds so great on. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's a good mouthpiece. Ted really knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's a great saxophone player too. So.
Are you playing much tenor these days as well, or not so much anymore?
I can't physically play the tenor.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I mean, I haven't done it, but because I can't carry it, I can't even use a neck strap. When I play the alto, I put it on a chair.
Huh.
I don't stand for it. So I haven't found the right stand to put the tenor on.
What about a harness like that takes all the pressure off your neck?
No, it's too much on my back.
Okay, understood.
And I haven't. I've been playing a lot of soprano though.
Good, yeah.
At the B flat horn. You know, so that's been sort of what I've been doing.
Singing?
No, I can't sing.
You
I
can't.
had this thing put on called a passimure.
Huh.
And this is actually, I had a tracheostomy.
Oh, that's in your neck.
Yeah, and see, I think if I take this off.
Oh, wow. That could be useful in certain social situations.
Yeah, if I, want to talk to somebody,
It's like the hearing aid.
a subtle hint, like I don't have anything to say. So I, it also, I can play my horn because of it, but I can't sing. I have no range. I feel like, and it's terrible because my whole life has been singing.
I know you sing a lot.
Yeah, I sang professionally for a while because there's a whole generation that doesn't know the lyrics.
Right.
But more for that, I'm a musician who sings. You're our generation, though. The younger generation doesn't know the lyrics.
People always said to me, Nicole, I don't know how you memorize all these lyrics. I said, it's easy because they're memorable.
Yeah, they're memorable. And well, see, we also came from a generation where there were still jukeboxes that even though they had rock and roll, they had this and that, there was still some Dinah Washington and some Tony Bennett and some Sinatra on your average restaurant's jukebox. You would hear these things. So, you heard Teach Me Tonight or standards that were there with lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like, I know the lyrics to a lot of songs too, because I love lyrics, and my mom was a singer like Ralph's mother and everything. But the problem with this Pathy thing was that I can't sing. Like I can't do, re, mi, fa, sol. I can talk, but somewhere over the range. I sound like alfalfa. I'm in the mood for love.
Now you're dating yourself.
Yeah, well, there it is. But, so actually I was singing but even just to relate to music, I always sang solos, sang along with anything that was playing in the room, right? It could be Sinatra, it could be Coltrane, I'd sing along with it. And, but anyway, so now we have with us actually a wonderful singer named Nicole Pasternak LaLama. I don't know if you kept his name, or I don't know what's your, if that's your singing name, or if you are, I don't know when people are actually married and they take the name, married and they don't take the name. It's all a very confusing world.
Well, my professional name, my singing name is Nicole Pasternak. But my legal name is Nicole P. LaLama. I took his name when we got married.
You did? And when was that? How long ago did you get it?
September 9th of 2006.
Wow. And
you just had an anniversary.
Yeah,
we just had one.
That's right. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And how long had you known each other before that?
Oh, quite a few years. We've been going together since the mid-90s.
I had a feeling you've known each other even longer,
Yeah. Well, we bought a house before we got married.
Yeah, we bought a house in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Yonkers. We joined forces and found our first home in Yonkers. Stop a little bit, hon, so you're in the frame.
Listen, I'm gonna just hop off and let you talk.
All right, Gary. Thanks, man.
Bye, Gary.
Bye, Nicole. Have a nice conversation. Bob
Thank you.
Mover, one of my favorites of all time. The great Bob Mover and great Ralph LaLama. Have a great conversation.
Great Gary Trillian.
And talk to you soon, okay?
Great Nicole.
Okay,
Have a
ciao
great
for
weekend.
now, Gary.
All right, Ralph, I'll send you that music.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good, bye. See you all later.
Oh, Gary, one other
Yeah,
thing.
Bob.
Can you text me Dick Oates' phone number and email address?
Sure, right. I'll get that to you right away.
Thank you.
All right, nighty-night. See you later. Thank you.
Okay, Gary.
So you bought the house. You've been together. Do you have any children?
I have children, 2 children by a previous marriage. I was married to a bass player and we had 2 children. They're grown-ups now with families of their own. So
And when they were growing up, did they like kind of divide between the two, between your ex and you, or did you raise them with Ralph? I mean, or did they?
Both.
no, both. They came between their dad's house and my house, and then Ralph came into the picture, and they befriended him, and they look up to him and see him like their second dad. So
Oh, that's great. And they have. I ask these things. I'm very curious about coupledom and how people get together and stay together, and that's. I had a. I interviewed John Handy once, and his wife. They were together, and they had completely different stories of their first date. I thought it was fantastic. They just they couldn't agree on anything, and you could see they really dug each other too. It was funny.
did they stay together?
Yeah, they're still together, and they're in their 90s.
Oh, that's great.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, I mean, I also got to interview Hank and Hank Jones, to the Joneses, and Theodosia, his wife Teddy, she was called, and she had a great story. She was working at a place uptown. It was actually a very famous restaurant whose name escapes me right now, but it specialized in chicken. Welch's began with W. Wells. It began with W, and it specialized in chicken and waffles, which is a Harlem delicacy now, kind of
Yeah.
in other places. And the funny story was she was the accountant, and Hank was in the band. And she said, and I noticed this very handsome man that played the piano. She said, I really thought he was a very good looking man. She said, but what really got me was I was the accountant. So when I went through the books, I realized that he always took home his complete paycheck because he didn't drink.
Oh,
Right.
So then I thought he was husband material.
oh, that's such a great story.
That's
You
funny.
have a daughter. Don't you have a daughter? You have a daughter, right?
I have a daughter. I have 3 daughters.
Okay. I met one because John came to the Vanguard, John,
Yeah, John Stewart.
Yeah. Yeah, she was with him. That's why I
Yeah,
met.
they're sort of an item.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're recent, but they seem to really dig each other.
Yeah.
And she's a great singer-songwriter.
Yeah, that's what
My
John-
daughter is really, really good. You may meet her when she's there, but I think she may be coming here because she's trying to alternate between living there with him, and then they go places. They're going to Italy tomorrow for a few days and a couple gigs. And and he's helping her. John can play. John Stewart, we're talking about, who's a very good Belgian saxophone player. He also is adept at playing non-jazz. So not that my daughter's music is non-jazz because it's jazz influenced, but it's her own stuff. I mean, she really has her own voice. I mean, she's sort of almost, I wouldn't compare it to anybody, but there's the feeling that Ricky Lee Jones might have, that type of thing, of her own generation, though. But I can't type her, but she's brilliant and knows a lot of music. And we did a tribute to Peggy Lee. It's really nice with Bob Cranshaw and Jimmy Wormworth and Ehud Ashiri and Joe Cohn and Saul Rubin. They alternated guitars, and it's really a nice record. So yeah, John is, and then I have 2 others. Since we can edit this out, but people might not need to hear that, but we can. I have beautiful 2 daughters, 2 other daughters. I have Anya, who's 17 and will graduate high school this year. She'll be 18 in February. And I have a 10-year-old named Simona. And they're beautiful and they're brilliant. And Simona plays piano and sings very well. And Anya loves gymnastics and can make these contortions. And she goes on the flying trapeze, thing I would never think to do. I don't know where she got that gene, but she likes it and she's good at it. And, they're a lot of fun. I had to get a T-shirt that said, I'm not grandpa, because I used to be go out and they say, "Oh, you're with your grandchildren today." No, these are my children.
Wow.
I mean, and
Yep. Yeah.
but yeah, so I have my kids. What are your kids? What do they do? May I ask? For
Uh, well, my children, well, one of them just moved from Boulder, Colorado with his wife and son. They just moved up to Wyoming, to Cheyenne. It's just a little bit north of the Denver area, where it's more affordable to live. And that's where she's from originally, my daughter-in-law. His name is Daniel Sheck. And then his wife is Robin, and they have a little boy named Tanner, who's just not quite 2 yet. And then my daughter Sonia lives north of New Orleans. She was in the Denver area for years and years and years, but she decided to make a big change in her life and moved down to Louisiana to be with her partner. And she's involved in the health industry. She's a project manager for Boulder Health. And Daniel plays the bass in various different bands. He's a musician, and then he works all kinds of other jobs to make ends meet for his family.
oh, that's beautiful. I mean, it's great that they.
Yeah, he picked up his dad's talent for the bass. He's a real natural. My kid's dad was a bass player you might have heard of back in the 1970s. He played with Edgar Winter in the White Trash.
I know that. I mean, I know who they were. I mean, I liked Edgar Winter. I mean,
That was pre-Frankenstein. It was like the days of like Jerry LaCroix and Rick Derringer, and
so did you start out as a kind of rock and roll chick? I mean, rock and roll
no, I grew up in the era listening to like the Beatles and Janis Joplin, and I was more of a Beatles person than a Stones person, but I grew up on Joni Mitchell and all the folk artists, all the rock artists. And then I also was introduced to jazz in high school. I mean, I was listening to pop music all my life because my parents always had it in the house. But I had a friend who was an aficionado of old time jazz, like 20s, 30s, 40s. And he introduced me all to the Billie Holiday stuff and Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and Peggy Lee and Rosemary Clooney. And and then my brother introduced me to the music from Brazil, the bossa nova, and Astrid Gilberto. And so as a kid, I was just like a sponge. I just like absorbed everything. I mean, just like to this day, I can remember songs from way back when,
Yeah, my sister Joy is a lot like that too. We grew up together. She's about 3.5 years younger than me, and we used to do Peter Pan, all the whole, the whole show for the neighbors. But she also later on she graduated to the music from The Connection with Freddie Redd and Lambert Hendrickson Ross. We would sing all of those together, and she's written some beautiful songs, and she's been in and out of it professionally, and she doesn't really do that. She's involved in visual arts now, but it's that kind of thing. She's the most, and Emily too. They're very eclectic. I'm sort of a one-track mind. I mean, I've listened to classical music, and I mean, there is pop music I followed and I liked. I mean, Stevie Wonder, Steely Dan,
right.
various things. But you remind me more of that, the females in my family. But so you guys met playing gigs together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Met on the bandstand.
Yep.
And then I was going to say, yes, now when COVID happened, this is where we might continue a train of thought here, that you did a project together, because at the beginning of COVID, the way I understand it, that's when Ralph was on the road and you came down with one of the early cases.
Yeah, him and Gary came back with it.
Yeah,
Gary came back with it too.
Yeah.
we were together again.
Yeah, really. Where were you when you came down with it?
Well, we did one gig. We had about 13 gigs. We did one gig in Paris, Le Duc, and then we went to Germany, and then that's when we saw Trump on the TV saying, on CNN saying, anybody that's in
In
Europe,
Europe.
any American that's in Europe better come home by Friday, or you'd have to stay there for 30 days.
Mm.
So we immediately, you know, I called Nicole. It was like 2 a.m. in Germany, and it was 9 o'clock here. I called Nicole. I said, Nicole, did you hear that? Because I knew she was watching CNN,
Yeah.
and she heard it too. So she got some tickets for us to get the hell out.
I said, where's the nearest international airport you can get to? And I laid out about $4,500 cash,
Yeah.
because between the time he said what he said and people were scrambling to get their American people home, the prices had jacked up on the internet to the tune of $2,500 a pop to get a one-way ticket home to America. Then, of course, by Friday, he'd said, no, I didn't mean
I didn't mean
American citizens. I meant, you know, foreigners, or I don't know. It was just like
So
some stupid
unbelievable.
thing. But anyway, I got the boys home on the 12th of March. The speech was on the 11th. I flew them home they flew home on the 12th. We went to Gary's apartment
Yeah.
with his wife, Joni. Nobody was hugging or
Yeah.
embracing. Already we were, you know,
Dealing with COVID.
yeah, we were already like, you know, cautious. And then Joni called me the next morning and left a message on our machine that Gary had had a fever that Thursday night, the 12th of March. So that was the 13th. And I couldn't go to work that day. And I had a full-time day job in addition to like all the many gigs I did, nights, weeknights, weekends. I had like so much going on, and it all came to a screeching halt. And it was just like, I have this little sticker on my computer. The sooner we all stop the world, the sooner it will spin again. And I keep it here to this day. It was just like, we just have to stop. I remember Jeff Jenkins is his name? No, he's the organ player from Denver. And he was like questioning on Facebook, you know, should I cancel this gig or should I not? Should I do that? I said, just cancel everything. We have to stop being kindling for this fire that is raging across the world. We have to stop. Everything has to stop. And that was my philosophy, you know, just stay out of the way of this thing. Anyway, Ralphie came down with it too. The 15th, it was a Sunday. That's when his fever came on. I got us tested on the following Wednesday in New Rochelle, and you know, fought like hell to get it testing. And then they told him he was positive the 2 days later, but I never tested positive. I never got it. I don't know how.
I don't know how you did that.
That's amazing.
In one second, I want to talk to you about the record you made, the family affair, how this adversity can prompt creativity.
Yes.
There's we were talking about COVID and you know how that sometimes adverse situations, you know, as my grandmother used to say, you know, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You know, in reading the story about Ralph in the All About Jazz article, it mentioned your experience during the COVID, you know, the onset of COVID and everything. And it reminded me of my particular adverse circumstances where when I was having this trach put in, I was in a hospital and it was the only time in my life I couldn't play my horn for 4 months. I had 2 months in the ICU and 2 months in a rehab. I had to learn to walk again and do all, you know, it was really a drag. Mm-hmm. But what I did to keep what was left of my sanity, I don't know how sane I was when I got there, but nevertheless, is I did over and over. I'd do tunes in different keys and imagine all that. And unfortunately, because I couldn't sing, you know, that was also something that I'd always sung, but it had to be just in my head and internally hearing it. And then I'm not doing product placement, but I wrote this book, which is a bunch of exercises in different keys of like basically patterns. But, you know, because I just had to do something. And it turned out I wrote 400 kind of ideas that you know, I think are usable. But if I'd never been in the hospital, what I meant to say is just that
right.
Necessity being the mother of invention,
sure, yeah.
as they say. And so I read that you guys you did this. You created the term staycation, you know, which I
Well,
maybe.
I think Nicole did.
I didn't create it.
No. But she said, here's what happened. We were sleeping, right? We woke up one morning.
During
And-
COVID.
And then, yeah, during COVID. And she said the first words out of her mouth was staycation. And I said, what? Staycation? That's great. I went downstairs, the piano, I went to the piano, and I wrote this tune called Staycation. And then I wrote another tune, and then I said, man, we're not doing anything. We must record. So I called that guy up at State Steeplechase, Niels. Then I said, man, I want to do a record because he heard of me. And he said, I never did anything for him. And I said, oh, yeah, I'll do this record. And so what I did, I said, Staycation, a family affair. Then that's when I hired Joe Magnarelli and his wife, Kiko Saruga. She plays organ.
Yeah, I
And,
played with.
and they're married. And Nicole sang a couple tunes on it. And we played a couple of her tunes, played a couple of my tunes. And then we played, Davey, my brother Dave wasn't on it, but he sent me about three tunes. So he was involved too. And I used Clifford Barbaro because Clifford's like family to me because we've been playing together for 40 years.
Oh yeah.
So I called it Staycation, a family affair. And it all came from waking up one morning. And she didn't even put a verb there. She said, staycation. I reacted. I went downstairs. I'm serious. I just went, believe it. And I figured out this tune. And, then I wrote another one, like I said. And then, I made it a family affair.
Yeah, well, I've since heard the term, but never in that context. Like it's kind of
Right.
you had that staycation, and without COVID, that wouldn't have happened. I can't wait to hear it. I'd love to hear it. I mean, so, well, that's wonderful. It seems like you've had a beautiful, fortunate love story together, and in this modern world, and and I guess it helped that. I mean, even though Ralph, you've gone on the road, one thing that you've been able to do is because of your teaching, and you're a great teacher. I know that, I know some of your students, and they rave about you, which I'm convinced that's all true because you're so much fun, and you're articulate, and you love the music so much, with such a passion that, you're the teacher everybody would like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, what is it? Like tough love. I'm a tough love teacher.
Yeah. Well, that's how we have to be,
Yeah.
I had a stream like that today with somebody, but I told him I just can't say sounds good, baby. It's just not in my,
I know.
unless it's good, but I can't lie to you. It doesn't feel right.
I know. That's right. That's right.
But I do try to present hope.
Yeah.
And rather than tell you that it's not good, I just try to say, well, what could make it better
Right.
if you did this?
Right.
Like the guy said, I still don't know why I have to learn my major scales.
Yeah.
I just hear it. I said, I don't know. You do it your way, and let's see what happens in a few months. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
Maybe you don't need that. I mean, I said Chet Baker might not have known what they were called, but he knew all of them in every position.
Right.
I mean, he might not have known, what it was, but anyway, you have to have certain kind of ears. So you've been teaching at SUNY Purchase, and we talked about the Ronnie Ben-Hur Jazz Camp and the summer teaching. But you've had what I mean to say is that you've been steadily employed, and when you've toured, it seems to me that you've had good jazz touring situations, and that in the generation, one thing, when no matter what you think about jazz education in schools, the one good thing about putting it in schools, because people, it's hip to like put it down, and maybe music was better when you had to learn it in the street, all that could be true, but nevertheless, if it weren't for schools, there'd be a lot of unhappy, frustrated jazz musicians that are playing horrible bar mitzvahs, and although bar mitzvahs are wonderful, but but I mean commercial gigs.
Yeah.
Well, I remember speaking with Don Friedman on this topic, the late great Don Friedman.
Yes, I knew him well.
And we did a recording with him back in 2008, I think it was,
Yeah,
with
well,
Dennis Irwin and Don Friedman and Ralph and myself. It's called In a Word. And I remember having a conversation with him, and he said the same thing. He said, these kids today don't know how lucky they are. He said, there was no school for me to go to learn about this. So it was the opposite. His attitude wasn't like, oh yeah, I learned it on the street and, you know.
Well, Don was weird that way at times. Like I mean, when I met Don Friedman, this is a funny thing. I knew him from when he played at the Half Note with Zoot and Al and those kind of things. I knew him in '68 when I was hanging out at the Half Note as a teenager. But I finally had a gig with him. I played with his Club Date band when I first came back to New York, and it was like 72, 73. And I was playing some weddings, you know, Latin bands, weddings, various commercial things. And there was this one band, a guy named Ray. He was a TV repairman, but he sang on weekends. He had been a big band singer, and he had a little band, and they played commercial gigs and this kind of thing. And very nice fellow. And he said, "Oh, guess what? Next Saturday night, we've got a Christmas party, and I've got Don Friedman on it." And I was like, "Wow, this is great. I'm going to play. I don't care if it's a commercial gig, just to play. I play the, you know, Mickey Mouse with Don Friedman. This is going to be great." And it was. But there was one little drawback. He came to the gig with a farfisa.
Oh, what a sound! What
If
a
you've ever heard of
sound!
farfisa, somebody said, I was telling that to one of my younger friends, and he said, "A farfisa? What's that?"
that, right.
I
You
said,
don't
"Well,
want to know.
it's exactly like it sounds. Farfisa." You know,
Yeah, right.
it sounds like that. And to Don's credit, he was such a great musician that it sounded fine.
Yeah.
But it was still a farfisa, you know, it was
You know, Farfisa sounds like a new pharmaceutical drug.
you know, hey baby, I got some farfisa.
Yeah, you want some Farfisa? Farfisa.
I invented a drug like that years ago because everybody was talking about drugs and this and that. So I just made up, I said, "Yeah, but man, have you tried UDT?" And I actually found out people who had tried it, because that was amazing since I made it up. The UDT is the Underwater Demolition Team.
Ah.
I was watching Sea Hunt or some silly TV show, and they mentioned the UDT, and I said, "Oh, that sounds like a drug." So, hey man, have you tried UDT?
Right.
But
Gotcha.
so you know, I was another thing, getting back to influences. You know, also people that we've known and loved. I when I meet anybody that knew Dennis Irwin, you know, it's just something that, like, I know we were talking a little bit about Mraz, who was another genius bass player, and there's a lot of funny stories concerning George. We could spend a lot of time on that. I loved him too. But Dennis, the kind of love that Dennis inspired, you know, I met him when he had just come to New York,
Yeah, yeah,
and one of his first gigs was with my band. He had just come from North Texas State,
right.
and I had a gig at the Tin Palace,
Yeah,
and hired Dennis on it. And the hip thing was Chris Anderson came and sat in with us on a few of those nights, and it was beautiful the way, I mean, Chris didn't play your normal chord changes. I mean, you know, Chris had his own stuff, and it was beautiful, but it was you had to really have some ears to catch him.
Mhm,
And I was amazed that Dennis, everywhere Chris went, Dennis was there.
mhm.
It was like, you know, I mean, he just, and it was effortless the way he was doing it, you know.
Mhm.
And you know, plus we laughed, you know, you'd laugh a lot with him, and
Yep.
his astrological forecasts.
Yep.
Yeah, you know,
And Ralphie, tell him about what he would do at the Vanguard at Christmas time. Wouldn't he recite some like
Lord Buckley,
Yeah, the
Buckley,
Lord
yeah,
Buckley thing.
You give him the microphone, he would do this bit. Yeah.
the Naz.
Yeah.
I think he was called the Naz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there was he knew all that by heart, and he was just yeah, we all loved him, and he was,
Well, one of the things I said about the quintessential bass player, sort of like my theory, the quintessential bass player is first felt, then heard.
yeah,
And that's the thing about Dennis. You felt it 100th of a second before you heard it.
uh,
There's an art to that, because some people play it from the top down, like the sound down to the feeling, but he was one of these rare people that played it from the 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 sound, the feeling of it hitting your heart, your gut. Does that make sense to you?
yeah. He was well. We would talk about chakras, Dennis and I. He liked to talk in spiritual terms a lot of the time, as you know, and I was kind of messing with. Well, I've always been interested in those kind of things too, and he talked about when the music, we aim for the heart chakra. When the heart chakra opens, is when the music really flows, and that was like something that we talked about, because I was going through a period, and he was, when he split up with Michael's mother,
Denise.
Yeah, Denise.
yeah, Denise, he was heartbroken. He was,
Oh, yeah.
and I was trying to fix him up, girls, and I mean, I was his good friend, and we were trying to help him through that situation, and I had gone through some romantic travails as well, and I remember there was a place called Richard's Lounge, which was out in the country in Jersey, and I brought a band out there with Dennis and Tom Harrell, and I think Al Daly. It was a really good band, and we were out there, and you would stay the weekend there, and they had cabins you'd stay in. So Dennis and I shared a cabin together, and we took this long walk, and it became one of those nights, almost, yeah, an unforgettable night. We talked about everything, and I really got to know him in that little walk better than I did. But we were saying that I told him that it was good that the music was still coming out. I said, you've managed to keep your heart chakra open. He says, yeah. He says, but I feel it blocked at times. He said there was a way that it was, and I told him I had gone through a period like that somehow the music wasn't hitting the place it should, and but he was with all his spiritual stuff and everything, he had a very analytical mind. So he was a very interesting combination of somebody that was completely ethereal and completely corporeal, whatever you would call it. I mean, did you feel that from him? He was like kind of out in space, but yet extremely grounded.
Grounded too, sure. I agree. Totally hear you. Yes.
I don't know if I ever met a person that was quite that way like that. And it made me really miss him, because that's a quality I knew I was never going to really probably ever. So there's a lot of good, delightful qualities in all of us. This particular thing was gone from my world now.
Right.
And
Yep, from all of our world.
quite simply put, go ahead.
Now I got a story. Okay.
Well, quite simply put, Joe Cohn put it just so well. He said, Dennis is a bass player that actually loves music.
Okay, so we're playing with Mel Lewis. So Dennis and I are rooming together. Okay, we're on the road. Okay, and
Get in the frame.
Yeah, get in the frame. We want to see that.
okay, Dennis and I are rooming together, right? And then he split. So we both had keys, so he split, and so I felt this is a good chance to get out my clarinet and find a reed. Because I have to play. I double on clarinet and flute and clarinet and saxophone. So. So I'm finding a reed, blah, 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 and I have to go to the bathroom. Okay. So I go to the bathroom, and Dennis comes in. And then he sees my clarinet laying on the bed, and he picks it up and he starts playing it. But the thing is, I knew he played clarinet because he told me he did. I said, yeah, sure, Dennis. Yeah. Because, because I studied the clarinet, and I was just busting him because yeah. So anyway, he picked up the clarinet. I'm in the bathroom. He starts playing the Brahms F minor concerto on my clarinet, which I played on my senior recital. You know what I'm saying? Another cosmic kind of thing happens. You know,
That's
he's playing exactly what I knew the piece.
all things that piece.
Yeah, well, he didn't play the whole, but he played a lot of it. He sounded pretty good. He sounded a lot of shit, but he sounded pretty good, you know. And so I knew he played. Oh, okay, you did play. Because then he told me that, yeah, he was a clarinet player, like his brother, Dave. But then when he got to, to North Texas, he started playing the bass, and then he went to bass, you know.
Right, but when I
I
met
just knew him as a bass player, you know.
well, he started out as a clarinet major.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then he
Yeah.
switched.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing about him, and actually George Mraz too, because Mraz would never play the alto for me.
Oh yeah.
He would just tell me that he was a better alto player than I was.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
you know, but
Right.
I just took his word. I just took his word for it.
Yeah.
What I loved him to say, he'd say when he had this, he was in this band with John Abercrombie, Richie Byrack, and those guys, Peter Donald. They had this band,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
George would say, "Oh, bomb." I used to sit in with them, so George would say, "So nice to see you. Did you bring your alto saxophone?" I said, "I did." He said, "Good. Take it out so I can step on it."
Oh my God.
It was lovely. That was lovely.
That was typical Mraz, you know.
Yeah.
But he had to love you to tell you that.
Yeah. Sure.
You know what I mean? That was like, if he really felt that about me,
Yeah.
I didn't think he would ever say anything like that. But but Dennis, on the other hand, I was going to say the thing about the two of those guys, because I'm sure George could play alto,
Yeah. Sure.
you know, and Dennis having been a horn player, that's what I mean. They're bass players, but they feel the top of the music.
Right.
They know what we're doing
Yeah.
in playing lines over the bass. And somehow that gives them an added insight
Get under it.
into how to get under
Right.
what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I mean, any great bass player has a sense of that. But I think the fact that he was a clarinet player,
Right.
and he could play, you must have heard him play Chorino.
Yeah. Well, we used to play all kind of stuff. We play after that. We played duets together and stuff. Sure.
On clarinet, yeah.
Yeah. Clarinet. That's what I mean. Clarinet. Yeah.
He could play those Chorinos like
I
beautiful.
know. Played blue. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was something else.
he was something else, and yeah, it was just apropos to nothing. I read this thing that something about saxophone playing. You said ha ta ta.
Oh, that's the thing. Warm up exercise. Yeah. Where you keep your mouth, you keep your embouchure, like when you breathe through your nose. So you go ha ta ta. The first thing is a ha to get it from the diaphragm and ta ta. And then the main thing about it is that you breathe through your nose when you inhale and exhale. You don't play like that, but you do this exercise so you strengthen your embouchure. And it works.
Maybe it would help with my breathing condition. When we talk later, we're not being filmed. Maybe you can just show me how you do that, because maybe
I can show you right now. Look, when you play, and every time you take a breath, you're relaxing your embouchure. But when you breathe through your nose, you don't move. You don't move.
Yeah, well, I wonder if I breathe through my nose after this operation.
I mean, but it strengthens it. You don't play like it. You do this thing for about 4 minutes, and you do it every day. You don't breathe through your nose when you play. You breathe the regular thing. It's an exercise to strengthen it. That's all. It's like a calisthenic with your embouchure. You know.
That's really good advice, Ralphie.
It is.
That's why I'm who I am.
That's right. He is who he is. One other thing, and I guess we'll wrap it up pretty soon. But yeah, well, as opposed to Hank Jones, or Hank has, as we said earlier, no hobbies. Do you have any hobbies? Either of you have any kind of things that you do for, for fun, as they say, or for non-musical things?
I do.
What do you do?
Well, I like sports. I watch a lot of sports and stuff. I don't bet
Me
on it. Huh?
Me too. I really like to watch sports.
Yeah.
Ralphie's like, he can watch a football game and he can say the things that the analysts are going to be saying a split second before they say it, because he sees the whole thing. He sees every player's move on any given play.
Oh man, we got to watch some games together.
Yeah. Yeah.
We should do that.
I remember when you were in Toronto, we went to your pad. We watched the Super Bowl, didn't I?
Yes,
Yes, that was like,
right. That's wow.
was that Toronto or Montreal? Maybe it was Montreal.
One of those Canadian places I lived in for a while.
Do you
Yeah,
live in Montreal? You said it for a while?
I lived in both cities, but I can't
Okay,
remember whether
it
it
was
was.
Montreal, because I used to play there a lot.
And you were there at what at the Rising Sun at Dudu's place.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the name of the play. We played at Old Montreal. We played on Saint Denis too, a club or
Who
something.
were you playing with?
It was with well, it was the guy John Ray on bass, Fred Light, and
At Fred
John
Light,
Boudet.
right?
John,
He became a
John
lawyer.
Boudet on
You
piano.
played at Laird de Temps.
Okay, that's right.
Something called Laird de Temps in Old
That's what it
Montreal.
was. That's right.
And I do remember that.
Yeah.
I tried to think. I remembered sitting in with those guys up there and having a great time. And I was saying to myself, there was another saxophone player, and I had a ball with him, and who was? And it was you, right?
Yeah.
That's
I'm
right.
so glad we had this conversation.
No, sure, I remember. Then we went to your pad and watched the Super Bowl. We were there that weekend, and I couldn't miss the Super Bowl. You know,
No, and
I'm a fanatic. You know.
That would be anti-American.
Yeah.
Well, it would be. I mean, I don't know. I just, I like sports. I mean, ants racing on a table. I'll bet. I don't bet on anything.
Yeah, I'm not a better. I like the
I
game.
grew up with gamblers, and so I don't like.
I don't bet.
The one who liked to bet was Joe Puma. He liked to watch do you remember Joe Puma?
Very well. Yeah.
I wrote lyrics for one of his songs. We were collaborating on stuff back in a few years before he died.
Yeah.
And that would be a nice song for you to hear that he wrote just for you, it's called. And it's a sweet little bossa nova. But anyway, I remember going over to his house and he made me a little lunch, and he was watching on this little black and white TV. He was watching the trotters going around at Yonkers Raceway. And, he's like, his eyes were on those trotters, on those horses.
Yeah, he was that type of guy. I played a gig once with him, and he was hilarious, right? I mean, he was a one-liner. He could have been a stand-up comic.
Yes.
And he had this duo he would play with Chuck Wayne, the two guitars.
Yeah.
That was just tremendous. I was actually playing with Lee Konitz. I would sit in with him as a teenager and at the half note, and they were opposite. So we do the two altos and then you hear the two guitars. But Joe, he was hilarious because we did a christening of a place that used to be the worst porno theater, Porno Palace on 42nd Street, which they turned into the police station. And it was Abe Beam was the mayor, who was like about, even shorter than Joe. Joe was not a big guy, as I recall, but
No.
Abe was like almost a midget. And, and I remember we played this thing, and he had like these one-liners just about it being a porn theater, and now it's going to be a police station, and he just had me hurting. I can't remember any of the lines at this.
Yeah.
But,
they didn't have to move any of the personnel, I suppose.
No. He also, the Chevy Chase story about Joe?
No, tell me.
Yeah, Joe is playing in some Italian restaurant, something like that, and Chevy Chase is in there having dinner, and Joe is playing like with bass player and that, and Chevy is there, and he's not known to be a really gracious person.
No.
And he says, "Play me some West Montgomery," and so Joe plays West Coast Blues or something like that, and play me, because Chevy does know jazz.
Yeah, he plays piano. He plays piano.
Yeah, he plays piano. He's sort of an amateur pianist.
Yeah.
So, play me some George Benson, and play me some Jim Hall. Play me some Barney Kessel, and then Joe turns and he says, "Act me some Marlon Brando, asshole."
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm going to share with you a tender moment I had with Joe Puma. Well, a memorable moment for me. We had a gig at Sonny's on Long Island, in Seaford.
Long Island, yeah.
And I guess I picked him up. We were driving to the gig together. I don't know if it was a duo or whatever, but we were going to the gig, and I remember saying, Joe, I just feel like I don't know if I've got it in me tonight. I just feel so empty. I was just not feeling like ready. I felt like there was nothing there, and I'm feeling empty about the music. And he said to me, "That's the best place to be." He said, "You're not coming in with any preconceived. Just go and do it, and don't you don't have to be ready or full or anything. Just go and do it." And I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that was the message. It was just sort of like, that's a great place to be. Be empty when you go. Be
That's the
empty.
zen. That's the zen of it. I mean,
Yeah.
the empty vessel idea.
Yeah,
So don't come in
exactly.
with any preconceptions of how it's going to be. I mean, and that's like, yeah, well,
And we had a great night.
yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did because and it assuaged your any fear you might have been feeling too, right? He had a way of calming. That's what those cats had. That generation of people. A lot of the time, they would just say one little thing, and it just cools you out.
Right on.
All of a sudden,
Oh, here's one of my favorites from Vernel Fournier. The late great drummer, right?
I love it. Yeah.
And Vernel and he had this thing that he said to me once that I'll never forget. He said, it's all about swinging. Everything swings. The whole universe swings. Even Halley's Comet comes around every 75 years. I mean, it was just like, it was so true. It was like, anyway.
Yeah, well, that's yeah. I had a funny. I mean, that we mentioned these people. It's great. We could just mention these people and go on for hours. But I had a Vernell experience too that was like really funny. Again, one of those serendipitous moments of synchronicity that's almost unbelievable. But I got in a taxi with my friend Tommy Morimoto. No, maybe it wasn't Tommy Morimoto. I don't know, but I was in a taxi with a friend who recently told me the story. And we were talking, we're in the back seat. I had my horn with me and saying, my friend says, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking I'm going to fall by Barry Harris's Cultural Theater tonight." And, Barry, sometimes I sit in, play a couple tunes. The last night he's got a trio gig tonight. He lets me play. And my friend says, "Oh, that's good." And the taxi driver turns around and says, "Oh, I'm on that gig tonight." It was Vernell.
Oh, you're kidding me.
That's how I met him. Yeah, I didn't know him before.
I didn't know he was a taxi driver.
Yeah, he was driving a cab.
Because when I worked with him in the years up before he died, I drove him around a lot. I took him places, and we drove upstate Connecticut to gigs or whatever. And I like to drive. I've always been into cars from the time I was a kid. So I like to be autonomous and have my wheels and be in control and all that stuff. So I remember Vernell said to me one time, you could have been a New York City cab driver. He says, and I would have given you a number, 3K69. And to this day, when I'm stuck in traffic in New York, I'm looking for that tag that says 3K69.
I wonder what that was. I mean, 69 has another euphemistic term, but I don't think he was
No,
meaning.
no. He was
No,
just
it had no meaning like that. 3K. That must have been his cab number.
might
Italian
been.
or something. It might have been because it was Vernell. That was the very first time I met him. I said,
What year was that?
"Oh my gosh, it was when Barry had the Cultural Theater."
Yeah.
That must have been around 85, 86.
Okay. Anyway, he gave me that number, and to this day, I've never forgotten it. I once in a movie that was filmed in New York, it came close. It was like 3K something close, but it's so funny. I mean, I can't be bored in New York City traffic looking at the tags on the taxis, because I'm like, one of these days I'm going to hit that number.
That's funny. And
The
he
one
knew the
Vernell
3K.
gave me.
He knew the 3K part, so that's probably definitely he knew something about. You had to be on the inside of that, right, to know that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I didn't realize that.
You know who else was a New York City cab driver?
Who?
Which was funny. Kenny Dorham.
Mm.
That was one of the jobs that he had. When I met KD, there used to be this after hours club in 1969 called Amo's Music Studio, Amo Music Studio, and it was up 5 flights on 21st Street, near between 5th and 6th, I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong, but I used to go there, and the sessions started at like 4 in the morning.
Wow.
Amo was a bartender at Slugs, and Evelyn Blakey was a house singer, and the piano player, the Big John Patton played organ, and people would do that, but they also had a piano there that was kind of out of tune, but Wynton Kelly would play it. At Cedar, all these great piano players would be up there. Everybody was up there. It was like a real big scene. So KD and Wynton Kelly were very, very close. And Evelyn Blakey was the house singer. So she would sing, and Wynton would play piano, and KD would be playing with various people through the night. And the end of the night, this is the first time I'd met him, Evelyn said, "Do you want to sleep over at my house?" Because it was a Friday and Saturday. She said, you might as well come to my place. You can sleep on the living room couch. And, we hang out, and sounded great. I was 17. Why not? And Kenny Dorham's Kenny says, "Oh, I got my car. I'll take you down. I'll take you home. We can stop by for a few minutes and this and that." So we go downstairs, and he was wearing this dashiki and beautiful African hat, and he looked like a king. Kenny Dorham had like these chiseled features. Was a beautiful person, beautiful looking person in his way, very unique. And we get to the car, and I go, "This is so cool," because I'm 17, right? And he says, "What do you mean?" "Well, it's a checker cab. You have a checker cab as your personal car. That would be so you." I can tell you're the hippest guy always. And this, like, it's just out hips everything. And then he fell on the ground almost laughing. That I thought that was his car. I said, "No, baby, I drive this taxi. I got daughters to support. I can't make money. I can't make enough money playing music to do it all the time. So I have other jobs that I do. And this is one of them." And I mean, I knew Ira Sullivan had an old car, but he was in Miami. And I knew Stan Getz was a millionaire. I'd met him too. And he was in New York. And KD walked like a millionaire. If you looked at him, he didn't know, there was nothing impoverished looking about him. But my God, you mean you drive a taxi and you play like Welcome to the World?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Ralph, in your travels, did you get to like you had that experience with Getz hearing you? Were there other memorable experiences where somebody, even people like, did you rub shoulders with, let's say, people like Joe Henderson, George Coleman? All these guys were around. Moody, Dexter,
Right.
any of these?
Every one of them, but Joe Henderson. I just met him once, but the other guys, they were very cool. Clifford Jordan, Junior Cook.
Oh yeah, Junior and I used to carry each other home.
And George Coleman. Yes, yeah. They were very nice, very nice.
They were all nice, yeah, really beautiful people.
Frank West, are you kidding
West,
me?
Yeah, Frank Foster. Yeah.
Yeah, I never got to know Frank West. A little bit I got to know him, but I didn't really.
Oh,
Foster I knew, but
well, we played in Carnegie Hall band together, for about 8 years. About.
Yeah, 8 years.
So we were, so I got to know him pretty.
That's John Patterson's band.
That was Patterson's band, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember writing a letter when the new director of Carnegie Hall took over and they canceled the Carnegie Hall Jazz Band. I wrote a letter to the president and said, the president of the new president of Carnegie Hall, and I said, "This is a big mistake. You should not cancel this band." I said, "You've got Wynton Marsalis over at Lincoln Center, and you've got John Faddis at Carnegie Hall. Come on, the Mets, the Yankees. I mean, New York needs this kind of like,
Giants, the Jets. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, the Giants and the Jets. I mean, this is New York. We gotta have like, you know, sparring partners. You know,
Yeah,
anyway, he didn't listen to me.
It was
no,
funny though, but Faddis had a couple meetings with this guy. I think his name was Harth. He was a
Yeah.
new guy. And I read about 2 years later, I read that the director of Carnegie Hall died of a massive heart attack.
Yeah, he
He died 2 years later. He
and
was
I
like
felt
40
really
he was
bad
like 40.
that I wrote him this
I didn't
letter.
feel bad at all.
I did.
But it was like, he died 2 years later. And Faddis said he was a real nervous kind of guy,
Yeah.
real power,
Probably one of these people that had to come in there and make his mark
Yeah,
and,
yeah, that
prove that he was relevant. And,
Yeah, right.
but
And-
I tried to make the case. I said, come on.
You should have listened to you. You would have lived.
Yeah, he might have lived longer. Who knows? But
so any
On that
parting
note,
on that, leave them with a laugh. We always say. No.
well, this is what I would leave you with. What I like to say, Bob, at the end of the gig, to the audience and to the musicians, I say, good, clean fun. Nobody got hurt.
That's a very good thing to say. We had good, clean fun. Nobody got hurt. And I was thinking of this statement about what we were talking about, not being a clone, but being a disciple of the music, and how it was something that Martin Mull, who left us this year too, I used to like him, and he said something beautiful, about imitating people. And he said, why should I imitate another person when I already am one?
Mhm.
That's a good one.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's, there's so many talented cats. I mean, our generation really spawned some wonderful people. We got you and Lovano and Richie Perry.
Mhm.
A lot of people sleep on him too.
Mhm. Yeah.
And and there's a lot of originality with this eclectic disciple approach that, without being clones,
Mhm.
that that's sort of what we tried to do, to keep this tradition alive and add something, however, it's like I always say, Moody told me once, he said, maybe I'm not an innovator, I'm not Coltrane, certainly not Charlie Parker, but I only know that I play Moody better than anybody in the world. And
Yeah.
you play the best Ralph LaLama around. There are stories of Ralph LaLama, by the way. He's legendary, and there's a certain, I won't mention who it happened with, but they said, yeah, so and so was playing, he's playing real well, this and that, and then this orchestra, the Mel Lewis band was visiting town, this and that, and Ralph LaLama came and sat in with him, and just, we all heard a difference. Like all of a sudden, we heard he was good, but we heard something. I see why people live in New York, and so you have a few. I've heard that at least twice, and maybe more often. But I remember two distinctive times people said, "Yeah, this guy from New York came in." One guy didn't even. I had to go through something. Yeah, he came. He was with a Mel Lewis. He played great. So and so was playing good, and then this guy came in, and I said, and I said it was either Rich Perry or Ralph LaLama. Wasn't sure which one, but it was you.
Aw, that's nice, Ralphie.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Oh yeah.
I said I didn't know. I'm not aware of that at all. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been a real pleasure.
Yes, Bob.
It's a real pleasure meeting you, Nicole. It's been wonderful. And Ralph, yeah, there was quite an evening we had. I feel like should have had a bottle. I don't drink wine anymore. I mean, I just decided because of my lung condition not to drink
Yeah.
anything. I didn't have a drinking problem. whenever somebody says I don't drink, they say, you know, and I said, no, it wasn't that. It was,
Right, right.
but it feels like I just missed a glass of wine. But
Ah,
Yeah, I think, I know what you mean. But
My
thank you, Bob, and
father
thank you,
Italian.
Jesse, too, for hooking us up. That's you,
Yeah.
Jesse.
Dolcetta d'Asti.
It's been a
funny,
pleasure.
It's not a sweet one. Oh, thank you, Jess. Ralph, thank you.
Thank you. I thank you.
thank you, everybody. Ciao for now.
Ciao
Yes.
for now, and God bless you. And
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, I get rhythm sections over here and stuff.
Wow, great. That's great.
So, you know, we could do that and put on a tape. You know, not a tape, but we can record it pretty well. We should do.
Yeah.
You know,
Some 3 little words.
yes.
3 little words. Ba, 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 da, ba, 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 ba,
But thank you,
ba,
Bob.
ba.
We appreciate it.
Put your
Yes.
friend.
And
Oh,
there you are back. Yes. And
keep going out of the
Yeah.
stupid frame. Well, they rather look at you than me anyway.
No, but that's not the point. People, the world wants to see you.
yes. Well, want to see both.
Now
of
we're
you.
gonna argue because of you, Bob. We had like 4 years without arguing. Now this night we're gonna argue about me being in the fray.
I have that tendency that I don't know what it is. You know,
It's called leaning forward.
yeah, you know the story about the guy goes to a psychiatrist and he says, "What seems to be your problem?" He says, "My problem is I can't seem to make any friends." And the therapist says to him, "Why do you think that is?" He says, "I really don't know, you ugly fat slob."
That's a good one.
I love it.
Okay, my dears.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tell that to Joe Cohn. Anyway,
Tell that's a joke. Going.
yeah, Joe had this. While we're at it, Joe had this bed bug problem for years.
Wow.
He's the only person in Manhattan Plaza
Yeah.
that I know that had that problem,
Mhm.
but they wouldn't go away. And I couldn't even, and we love to play together, but I couldn't even have him over.
Right.
It was just the thought of one of those things in the house.
Yeah.
We don't do it. So
Yeah.
finally he called me last week, 2 weeks ago, and he says, "I can come over again." I said, "You sure?" He says, "The bed bugs are gone."
Oh,
What happened? He said, "My daughter, he's got a daughter, Shay, who's a good trumpet player, actually. She got Roscoe the bedbug dog.
Oh yeah, the bed bug dog. I've seen him on TV. Just
Yeah,
like on TV.
He sniffs them out, and then they freeze them or they ice them or they do whatever you do to kill bed bugs. But he actually worked.
wow.
It cost $400, and he got rid of his bed bugs.
Bed bugs. Yeah.
So here's to Roscoe the bedbug dog.
Here's to Roscoe.
Right, drinking, I would make that the final toast
Okay.
Okay.
of the evening.
Ciao.
All right, good night.
God
Good night.
bless. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.